Hi, everybody. I'm Cynthia Kane with the William Allen White Library, ESU Libraries and Archives, and welcome to part 2 of our video tutorial for EG101 Composition 1 with your session on the Writing for Change essay. In this video, we're going to be dealing with library instruction, introducing you to the best use of our library databases and also more ways of finding information such as from Google and Google Scholar, and also how to evaluate all of those resources so that you know you're getting credible and reliable information. So in this session, we want you to be able to learn by the end of both videos how to identify a social issue in order to construct evidence for positive change, using appropriate databases in order to find evidence for pro and con perspectives about your social issue, perform basic search techniques in databases in order to locate at least 3 credible resources and hopefully more about your social issue that you're doing for your Writing for Change essay, creating a free New York Times digital edition subscription, which is a resource that we have through the library. This is totally free to you as an ESU student. And finally, how to use a source called Flipster, which is another way of browsing magazines' most recent issues in a digital form to find information about current topics. Flipster is also a good way of generating an idea about a topic for your Writing for Change essay if you're still thinking about what you would want to write about. So let's do a quick reminder of the topic that we came up with on part 1 of our video tutorial, and also how to identify what are called key words that you will use for searching for information about your topic. So you might remember, we decided that our topic was going to be access to the internet should be made affordable to all rural communities. And in part 1, we talked about identifying perspectives, possible sources for those perspectives, and then the most appropriate resources such as Google, Google Scholar, and perhaps resources from the library to find sources on your topic. One thing you want to take a little bit of time to do once you've identified a topic for this assignment, and actually for any other research that you would be doing, is to look for the nouns in your topic and see what you can figure out that will be appropriate keywords that you're going to put in. Now, we all know that with Google, sometimes we can type in a long sentence and we might get some results, but if you learn to think a little bit more in terms of key words that you're going to put into Google or into a library resource, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to have much better results and you won't have quite as many to search through. Everything's going to be a little bit more targeted and a little bit more relevant. And I'm going to show you how you do that in just a second. So some keywords that would come from this topic, a lot of them are going to be pretty obvious. Internet, obviously, rural. I put in online because something you want to do with keywords is also think for synonyms. Now, synonyms are words that have the same meaning. So I could do internet or online, and I might broaden my search a little bit more, but find more relevant information that I wouldn't have found the first time. Now, of course, town could be a relevant keyword. Community, town or community. Access is, of course, another one that pops up because it's right there in the topic. Access or accessibility, again, think of different terms, different variant terms or synonyms that you can use to search for more information. Equity could be another one. We didn't really put that in here in the topic, but we are talking about equitable access or equal access. So equity could be another keyword. And of course, affordability, because we are looking about affordability. We are focusing upon that. So some resources that we can use to find sources for this particular topic, for this essay, certainly could be Google. Some of you may have used Google Scholar at scholar.google.com. We're going to look at that a little bit as well, because that can be another source for information. One of the difficulties with Google Scholar that we will find, though, is that sometimes the full text of articles, it's not always going to be readily available, or you're going to be asked to pay for it, which we don't want you to do. We'll go over that a little bit as well. We're also going to be looking at some library resources at our library's webpage at www.emporia.edu/library. Specifically, we're going to be looking at something called the Discovery Search Catalog, which is our library catalog to find both print books and a lot of electronic books or ebooks that you can read freely online. We're also going to be looking at something called databases, which again, you may have used for different assignments or in different schools. Databases can be great information for general magazine articles and in-depth journal articles. And then, as promised, I'm also going to show you how to use the New York Times Digital Edition and Flipster to find more current articles and more current information. Again, if you're brainstorming for a topic for this essay, those can be really useful. So what we're going to do now is switch over and we're going to go to Google first. Now, you may remember that with Google, as I mentioned, you can just start typing in a long search for information. You can type in a long sentence and maybe get some results. But remember the keywords that I generated. Let's try internet access and rural communities. And we're going to see what happens here. Now you notice that actually we're linking to some scholarly articles. We'll come back to those in just a second with Google Scholar. And I'm getting some interesting things here. Now, I mentioned in part 1 that sometimes I do go to Wikipedia if I don't know very much about a topic. Wikipedia can be a good way of getting some background information, but as we always caution, do not use that as a source for information, or certainly not a sole source for information. So it looks like there's an article in Wikipedia about rural internet. Now I could get some background information from this, specifically with the United States. One thing I do like to do with Wikipedia, though, is scroll down to the bottom and look for any external links that might be a little bit more reliable. So here's a link from February 9th, 2006 on Rural Telecommunications Briefing Room. Now, one thing we want you to do is focus upon techniques for evaluating the reliability and the effectiveness of resources. Notice that this one actually dated from February 9th, 2006. That might not be the most useful source for my topic, but again, I could use this article to get a little bit of background information if I felt as if I needed it. As I scroll down here, it looks like there are some articles. Remember we were talking about finding statistical information. Here's an article that's from the Pew Research Center, which I actually could check out. They have done a lot of different polls and studies over the years, so I would feel pretty confident in using this type of study for my essay. And this is an article from 2018 that says about a quarter of rural Americans say access to high-speed internet is a major problem. This would not be a bad site to include in my Writing for Change essay. I'm getting some good statistical information, and this is what you always want to be aware of when you're evaluating information from Google or other sites that might not be vetted or reviewed by librarians or by other reliable sources. Let's go over here to this tab, Google Scholar. And I just went to scholar.google.com. Now, Google Scholar can be a source for journal articles, and I'm going to do my same search on internet access and rural communities. And there are some possibilities here. Again, I need to look to see when these were actually published. There's an article from 2003, another article from 2005, 2010. This one looks rather interesting, the limitations of poor broadband internet access for telemedicine use in rural America. Well, let's click on this and see how far we get with this one. And it looks like I have a little bit of an abstract for this one, but let's see what happens if I try to click on the full text, if I wanted to get the full text. And this is what I wanted to make you aware of. Google Scholar can get you to a point where you can find a reference to an article, but notice what's happening here. It's saying, oh, I would have to buy that article. We're going to leave this up here for just a second because I'm going to show you something else that I could do if I wanted to see if our library had free access to this article from the Annals of Internal Medicine. So again, Google Scholar can be a good source, but you need to be very aware of the fact that it may not lead you to the full text of an article, or it may get you to a point where you're going to have to pay for it, and we do not want you to pay. This is not what this research is all about. So we're going to switch back over here. And what I'm going to do now is direct you to some library databases as well as our Discovery Search Catalog that are freely available to you as an ESU student. One reason that we want you to be aware of our library resources is that the library is actually paying for access to databases, and we also pay for access to electronic books as well as to print books. And because of that, you're not paying anything for that access as an ESU student. We're going to be looking specifically at some databases called CQ Researcher, Issues and Controversies, and Opposing Viewpoints in Context, as well as our Discovery Search Catalog. All of these will give you articles and viewpoint essays. They're great for this assignment. They will also offer a cite or a citation tools feature to help you create a citation for your item in MLA format. But one thing you have to be very careful of when you're using a citation generator or a citation tool, they may not always be correct. So always go back to any MLA help that your Composition 1 instructor has provided you, because then that will help you verify the accuracy of a citation that you get from one of these citation tools and make any corrections if you need to. Let's go back. And I'm going to open a new tab. The quickest way to get to the library's webpage is to go to www.emporia.edu/library. And when you type in that address on any browser, that's going to redirect you to this Google site, which is actually our library's webpage. And our most recent hours will always be listed here. We also have a chat service, and when this chat with us window is open under Ask a Librarian, you can chat with a librarian in real time. That can be a good way of getting some quick information or quick answers to questions. So we're going to go over to our Discovery Search Catalog first, because I want to do some searching on my keywords, and I'd like to see if we have any print books or ebooks on my topic of the internet access and the affordability with rural communities. If you go into the Discovery Search Catalog, the first thing you want to do if you're searching off campus is go up here to this link that says Hello Guest, log in for full access, and type in your ESU username and password. This is the same one that you use for Canvas and for your email, by the way. And this will authenticate you as an ESU student, and now you can do everything off campus that you could do if you happen to be searching on a computer on campus or using the wireless access on campus. So remember, I was using the keywords of internet access. Notice what's happening here. I'm going to search for books now, but just as can happen with Google, suggestions for my keywords will start popping up, and I use suggestions quite a bit because that really helps me come up with some ideas that I might not see otherwise. And let's do rural areas or rural communities. I really like that. Now there are a couple of things that I could do down here. I could limit my results just to print books if I wanted to see what we had in print, or I could limit to ebooks. Let's do print books first. And it looks like we do have some print books in the library, a lot of government documents, federal government documents, which might not be that bad, but I also, again, have to look and see if any of these are relevant to my information need. Here's a good example of one. That sounded pretty good by the title, but again, that was published in 1976. Probably not going to be good for my paper. So it looks as if there are some print items, which, by the way, you can check out from our library. But I think I'm going to be a little bit more curious over here. Notice I clicked on ebooks only. So I'm going to search again. And in this particular instance, I think I had a little bit more luck with ebooks. Here's a book that's called Rural Poverty in the United States, and it was published in 2017. Now, it's getting into business and economics, economic development. If I click on the PDF full text, I could go ahead and I could read this book online, or I could search by different chapters. This would be a good one for me to use. Remember, we were talking about books for background information. So I could look at some of these different parts or chapters of the book, and you notice what I'm doing is just scrolling and reading that online. If I wanted to download a specific chapter, I could download that as a PDF. And I also want to make sure that I go up here to my cite feature if I'm creating a bibliography. And I'm looking for the citation format for MLA. And I could copy that and paste that into a working bibliography or a working works cited page. But again, checking to make sure that my formatting is correct. So that's a quick overview of searching in the Discovery Search Catalog. Let's go over to databases now. And I mentioned that we have 3 databases that you can focus on for this particular topic or for this particular essay. And one is called CQ Researcher. And I'm going to click on the letter C and go over here until I find CQ Researcher. Now, what you're going to notice, I'm already signed in with my ESU username and password, so I didn't have to sign in again to access this particular database. If I had exited the browser completely and then gotten back in, I would have been prompted again to enter my ESU username and password on being off campus. So don't be surprised about that. So CQ Researcher actually is a good resource for current topics that are updated every week. We're going to go back up here, and I'm going to do Internet, Access, and let's just do rural this time. I'm not going to put in communities, because that might limit it a little bit too much, something you do have to be aware of. Now, as I scroll down here, I might not be getting as much on CQ Researcher in terms of being relevant to my information needs. So let's just do Internet Access. And sometimes with a keyword, you have to back it up a little bit to find something that would be interesting or that might work. Now there's Internet and Technology. Let's go back up here on this one. If I click on this link, there might be something in here that I could use in terms of affordability of the internet. This is talking a little bit more about privacy. Now, I will tell you that not all of these databases will work for all of your topics. So in this case, this may or may not work for my information need, but if I found a report on CQ Research that looked possibly interesting, I could go over here to Cite Now, go to MLA, and I could copy and paste that citation. And one thing you want to do on CQ Researcher, I could go to print, and I could actually print out this text of the CQ Researcher, or I could save it as a PDF and email it to myself as well. So it just depends on what you need when you're researching for your topic. I'm going to go back here. There we are. And I was just going to show you another one. If you find a CQ Researcher report that offers you the option to view as PDF, you can do that. And then with the PDF option, you could download it and save it onto your computer. Or if you're using a computer such as one of the computers in the library, you could download it onto that computer and email that PDF as an attachment so that you could save and then look for it that way. And that one is a little bit different from some of the other databases that we have. Let's go next to opposing viewpoints in context. So I'm going to go to the letter O. And the first one is opposing viewpoints in context. I really like this one too, because this one will cover different types of resources. You can get articles, but you can also get book chapters, you can get transcripts, videos, just a lot of different things. Now, if you're still trying to figure out a topic for the Writing for Change essay, you could go to Browse Issues. And I love this because this can give you a lot of different categories to search on, and that might help you come up with some ideas if you're still trying to think about a topic for this essay. And I could also go up here to Internet Access, and you notice I'm getting some different possibilities here. Let's just do rural again. And it looks like I've got some different viewpoints here. I've got 25 magazine articles. I have 322 news reports or newspaper articles. I've got a lot of different possibilities here. There's some different things such as net neutrality. The information revolution has created a digital divide. Unequal access to the internet harms society. Again, look to see when this was actually published. And there are some videos here. Here's some possible audio files. This could be a really interesting one. This actually is an audio file from the National Public Radio show, All Things Considered, and that would be a great resource for my topic. This is why I do like opposing viewpoints so much. And you can see I'm getting some really interesting things here. Let's click on this one. So I strongly encourage you to use opposing viewpoints. Now this is about rural Canadians, but that might apply very well because there's a lot of overlaps. Now something you can do with opposing viewpoints and with some other databases as well, you can actually save an article to your Google Drive. And you can link that to your Google Drive, which you have access to through your g.emporia.edu account. You can also download. You can download up here too, and you can also cite. We'll go back to our databases tab. And finally, issues and controversies under the letter I. These are not the only databases that you have to use, but I would strongly encourage you to start with these, particularly opposing viewpoints for this particular essay. And let's do internet access and rural again. Notice I'm not really making this a complicated search. And here are some possibilities in terms of articles, net neutrality, primary sources. That's going to get me some speeches that could be considered to be primary. Issues and controversies will also link to infographics. There didn't happen to be anything on this, but if we go to media or court cases, we're probably going to have to stick a little bit more with articles. And again, as we find with any of these, you can read the full article. And I'll go back up here. If I go to Page Tools, that will show me where I can generate a citation like we've done before with MLA, or I could share, or I could save or download this article. Again, notice when this was published, 2007. That may not be that appropriate for my information needs, so it just depends on what you find. And I'm going to go back over here to our slide. So again, as a reminder, I would definitely try opposing viewpoints in context as a possibility, along with our Discovery Search catalog to try some books, but also look for CQ Researcher, look for issues and controversies on the Databases tab. And I think you're going to be able to gather quite a bit of information. If you have problems, check with us at the library, because we're happy to help you come up with some other keywords or maybe think of some other resources to look for information. And finally, I'm going to go back to the library's webpage and show you the New York Times digital edition and Flipster. Now, the New York Times can be very useful, again, if you're looking for current information, and particularly if you're dealing with a specific current topic for your Writing for Change essay. We'll go back over here. And I'm going to go ahead and close this again to show you how to get to this. Under Databases, we'll go to the letter N, and New York Times Digital Edition. This doesn't show up very well on my computer, but if you've not used this before, you're going to click on this Register button. And this is where you would create an account, use your g.emporia.edu account to register, because that will recognize you as being affiliated with Emporia State University. Now, I have an account, so I could just put in my email address and my password here, or I could go ahead and create one. And then what will happen is, this will let me read the New York Times, and it would show that I was signed in, and I can access as much information as I wanted to. And I can go ahead and sign in with Google. And I can link my account. And now I'm all taken care of. So you can create an account, and it's good for up to 1 year, but you can always renew this as long as you are enrolled as an ESU student. So you can browse the New York Times, you can browse by world, United States. You can browse by different sections. And you can download the New York Times app on your phone or other device, and then sign in with your emporia.edu account once you've created it. And finally, we'll go back over here to the library's webpage. The final thing I wanted to show you is Flipster. And that's toward the bottom of the library's webpage. Now, this can be incredibly useful, again, if you're still trying to think about a topic for your Writing for Change essay. These are actually digital issues of magazines that we are subscribing to. And the great thing about it is you can go over here to News and Politics, for example. And if you wanted to read the latest issue of Time magazine online, you can do that very easily. And this happens to be covering the recent death of John Lewis. But as I browse through here, I can look at different articles and I can go to them directly. Here's one on back to school, which might be a topic I could write on for my Writing for Change essay. And I can browse through these very easily. I can also print an article if I wanted to. And if I go back over here and go back to Flipster, I can browse through different categories. I would strongly encourage you to have some fun with Flipster, especially just reading some magazines, not only for your topic, for the Writing for Change essay, but just reading whatever we have here. We do have consumer information, food and cooking, fitness and health. That's just a good way of relaxing. Just like the New York Times, you can also download an app for Flipster on your phone or your tablet, and then you can sign in with your emporia.edu information and be able to read these issues with your phone or with your tablet as well. And we'll go back over here. Thank you for watching both of these videos. Now remember, as you work on your Writing for Change essay, you can ask for help from your library liaison for your composition class, and you can also contact us at the library. Remember that the library's webpage is www.emporia.edu/library. You can call the reference desk at 620-341-5207. You can email us at libref01@emporia.edu. You can chat with us on that chat box on the library's webpage. There are a lot of ways of getting in touch with us. Good luck with this essay.